Taco Tuesday. Must be time. Cloud Talk Live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad to be back with you. I got friends walking around. I'm watching them step over the wires I have strewn on the floor, thinking, you know what I forgot to do is tape those suckers down. Let's hope nobody trips and you lose me. Hey, welcome to the program, everyone. I'm so glad that you are here. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Tell me who you are. Tell me where you are. I am in the middle of Rackspace's corporate headquarters here in San Antonio, Texas. And that is not a fake view back there. You're going to see people walking about doing their thing because this is just a live show. And we're here in the middle of what we call Main Street here at the Castle. We call it the Castle because we are in an old mall that we've refurbished and it's all nice and spiffy. But it was called Windsor Park Mall. So we call this place the Castle. So welcome to the program. If you want to get a hold of us, send us an email at solve@rackspace.com. I would love to hear from you. Let's see how many emails I can get today. So go ahead and just start sending emails, but make them nice. Let's not be mean. And I'm going to turn that off for a second because I got people saying hi. I got Haroon here. He's in from India. We've got Harsh is here. Rick Garza is here. So glad that you're here from Gauge Technologies. We've got Raka from Chicago is here. Ontario, Canada. I don't think we've had Ontario before. I've got a job coming up later in Ontario, Canada. Atlanta is here. Everyone, I'm so glad that you have chosen to spend, well, maybe just about 30 minutes with us here today. This is going to be a killer program. I have a brand new guest, somebody you have never been able to, you've never seen on the show before. He's going to be on in shortly. His name is Vinesh. And I bet he's got some friends here because Brendan is from Change Healthcare. And today is all about healthcare. We're going to get into it here. So Gert's here from the Castle, hiding back in his little room somewhere. I got to push a button. I'm going to push that button right there and click this button right here because it is time for us to talk a little bit about what we do here. So this show, the Cloud Talk Live, as you know, if you've come around here before, is part of our thought leadership program. Thought leadership here at Rackspace is something we just give away. There is no fee for any of it. And part of that is our podcast. Podcast also is this live cast. Now, the podcast has its own content, but we do feed the audio from this podcast down into, or from this video cast down into the podcast. And if you'd like to make sure that you're catching those, well, all you have to do is subscribe. Go ahead and subscribe to Cloud Talk anywhere you find your podcasts. All right, a couple more hellos. We've got Anand is here. We've got Pravin is here. Chris Hansen is here from Rome, Georgia. Welcome, Chris. Glad that you are here. Well, everyone, I've mentioned his name. I'm going to bring up his picture here shortly. I want to introduce you to the one, the only, Vinesh Kolpe. Now, Vinesh is a racker. You can see that on his little baseball card. That's what I call those things that I create, baseball cards. I put the logo of the company. Now, Vinesh is a relatively new racker. If you're new to us, you know that we call ourselves here at Rackspace rackers. And so he joined us several months ago. But this is the first time I've coerced him to come be a part of the program. Vinesh comes with a strong healthcare and technology background. And that, of course, is our subject matter for the day, is talking about all things technology and healthcare. So let's get Vinesh up here. Everybody, a warm round of applause for Vinesh. Vinesh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeff. It's amazing to be here. I'm a huge fan of your show. I make sure to tune in. So it's amazing to be finally here with you.
You're too kind. I'm so glad that you are here. You definitely increase the intelligence of the room by a whole lot when you walk in. Hey, so we were talking before while I was snacking on my breakfast, which is, of course, a taco, because today's Taco Tuesday. And at Rackspace, we have them. And we started this debate of who has the better taco on I-35. I'm down in San Antonio. You're up in Dallas. How are the tacos in Dallas?
Amazing, man. I think that's a little fight going on between Dallas and San Antonio, but you have to come down here to try it. So
that's right. Well, I tell you what, a taco in Texas is still better than a taco anywhere else. That's what I say. Hey, Vinesh, so you joined us here at Rackspace earlier this year, but you where we are helping companies transform through the use of technology. A lot of times there's clouds involved in that, but you come from a healthcare background. Why don't you just tell us really quick a little bit about that background?
Sure, Jeff. I've been working in the healthcare vertical for about 2 decades now. My background and history is primarily working for health plans, both Medicare, Medicaid, as well as commercial plans in managing the cost and quality of care, right? By leveraging, innovative solutions as well as, data enhanced products. So how do we leverage all these technologies to, fix our broken healthcare system? So that's been my focus for a long time now.
Yes, and definitely a broken healthcare system, unfortunately. So inside of healthcare, not everybody is a healthcare expert as you become over the years. Let's break it down just a little bit. Tell us what is the difference between a payer and a provider outside of the obvious things that a name infers?
From a very high level, right? Provider is, a doctor, you go see a doctor, that's considered a provider. A health system is a provider organization. For example, a hospital is sometimes considered, that health system. Payers are your insurance companies, right? The Uniteds, the Blues, that they eventually pay the claim, right? So they pay for healthcare. So again, very high level, but that's the difference.
Yeah. And so we think of healthcare, especially here in the US, as something that the government is very involved in and becoming more involved in. And we think of healthcare also as one of those areas that is very protective when it comes to technology. So between those two things, being protective of the technology, because the data is really super important, and because there's a lot of government regulations that tie into that as well, healthcare can tend to be one of those areas where innovation and advanced technology, you don't tend to necessarily think of the two things as synonymous. Why is that?
I think again, it's look, healthcare is accounts for about 20% of our GDP. Jeff. About $4 trillion. A trillion of that is waste, right? But in spite of all this spend, it feels like we are stuck in this third and fourth industrial age in terms of shifts in healthcare compared to what's happening in mobile, entertainment, banking. I was in a large hospital system about last month, about 20 years after where I was there for the first time. Wow. And the ward there is pretty much unchanged, right? They're still using the most cutting edge technology, the fax machine. So so things
so they all went back down to the every other office and went into healthcare.
Yeah. So, in fact, I got my X-ray recently done and they gave me a CD-ROM. I don't even own a CD player. So, so, whether you are in San Francisco or Mumbai, you're waiting in, waiting rooms for hours to get that 15-minute visit with your doctor. Probably that took you about months to schedule it. So, our challenge really is to move to true healthcare from what we do today, which is sick care. What do I mean by sick care? Sick care is our model today, where each of us and our patients get very intermittent data, right? So you may be in a clinic or an ER, you get a blood pressure, EKG in the four walls of the clinic. So this intermittent and episodic data, creates a very sick care reactive system, where we wait for the patient to show up with a heart attack. That's so right. A lot of these things have not changed in a while, but I'm seeing a lot of trends, and happy to touch on those trends that are kind of pushing us in that direction.
Well, I do want to definitely get into some of those trends, but I love the fact that you've called out that what we have here primarily, especially here in the US, is sick care. And what we find is that so much of what happens, like you said, is just waiting for the event to happen that's going to preemptively cause somebody to come in. So how are trends in healthcare helping to turn the tide there?
I think we need to think exponentially, Jeff. The Moore's law, right? The power of computing, getting twice as fast as, at half the cost every 18 months. As our CTO Srini says, everything around us has been Appleized, right? Think about it. It's only been 15 years since the first iPhone, right? Airbnb was a mattress company, about 12, 14 years ago. So companies now need to leverage the cloud and, all that digital technology. And I can cover the arc very quickly, right? Look, with our magic smartphones, we can look at surgical scorecards, we can rate providers, we can compare drug prices. So as consumers, we have now a lot more power, right? Our phones actually are now FDA approved medical devices, so you can do an EKG on your phone or your watch. The Internet of Things, Jeff, now it's moving to IOMT, which is the Internet of medical things, right? We are in 5G, which is 100 times the speed of 4G. So if you're thinking of building apps, we should be thinking about building for 5G and even 6G, right? I mean, I just heard that the first 5G surgery was done, in 2 years ago, actually. So it's been a while. So we have all this massive amounts of data, but it's siloed to us, right? So your data on your phone is siloed to you. So we need to be able to convert this data into information into then what turns into clinical utility, right? For example, health systems don't talk to each other today, right? So we have all this digital exhaust. Technology is important, Jeff, but also equally important are the incentives, right? How do we pay for healthcare? Today, we pay for disease. So we need to be able to pay for prevention, right? We need to be paying for keeping people healthy. Now, thankfully, that shift is changing from fee for service to value, as you may have heard, value-based care, right? A lot of that is being talked about and implemented using different programs like direct contracting, the ACO REACH. That's coming into play as well. So.
Okay, Vinesh, you said so many things in there, and I wish I was taking notes because I want to remember them all. But the main part, one of the main things I wanted to dig into is, I led this section off by talking about how healthcare is one of these systems, these environments, these verticals that is slow to innovate. And it's slow to innovate because, when you think about the bureaucracy, when you think about the regulation and compliance challenges, it causes that. But then when you bake into the fact that what you just said is this little device is an FDA approved medical device, what that says is if we're going to move towards a true healthcare environment as opposed to a sick care environment, well, that means that because of the fact that we can now take that to the Internet of Medical Things, the term you used just a moment ago, that means that the field is ripe for innovation. The field is ripe for this type of true healthcare to happen at the edge. Now let's take that term, the edge, which we've been using to refer to, hey, let's put some containers, out in somebody's retail environment. But the edge as it relates to the medical world and true healthcare really could be this. It could be my watch. It could be the pacemaker. I don't have one, but I'm tapping as if I did. So maybe unpack a little bit where some of the cool innovation is happening at the edge and outside of the system.
Sure. I think a lot is going on right now. Jeff, we are looking at, we touched on the Internet of Medical Things, but there are a lot of things happening around, the sensors, for example, right? So if you look at the field of diagnosis, is changing from, we are now looking at breathables, right? So breathables can not just, look at your breath, but also detect cancer, right? So there are hearables, which you can listen to music, but also then track activity. We have ringables that track sleep. So a lot of that is moving to the edge. We have all this what I call as the digital exhaust or the digitome, which is connected 24/7 to the patients, right? And we can use that information, and then insurance can use that information differently to pay. So, for example, if you're walking more or less, they start to charge differently. So a lot of these new technologies are moving, across the edge, to be able to leverage that ecosystem to then move to data.
Isn't that interesting? Because, if I think about, if I were to go as this, somebody who's not in the prime, but I'm not retiring yet, but if I were to go and want to get a new healthcare policy or an insurance policy, what do they tend to do? They send somebody out to take some blood work, to maybe run an EKG, and then walk away and then make a guess. But what if I could walk in and say, let me share with you my health data, and I'll show you how I exercise 4 days a week. I'll show you what my caloric intake is. I'll show you these sorts of things. I'll show you how my weight has ideally gone down a little bit over the past few years, and how I would be a good bet. And what that ultimately does, and this is why I love getting into these types of technology conversations, and that's because it allows us to truly take ownership of who we are as individuals. In this context, we're talking about it in healthcare, and we don't have to go and deal with sick care. We can take care of it on the healthcare side of it. But your comment about, and the term you're using, digital exhaust, ultimately all of this data, while interesting, if it's not used for something more higher purpose, does just become that exhaust. So we have, in our last few minutes, let's talk a little bit about how data is truly transforming what we're doing with a lot of this digital exhaust, and how providers, how payers, how individuals are using that.
I think the example that we talked a little bit before was I can hear myself. So a lot of that. Sorry, Jeff, I was hearing myself. So we talked about the the data, right? The digital exhaust. So how do we take that and then leverage AI and machine learning to make sense of that data, right? So to be able to then use that data to pay for healthcare differently, right? So for the insurance companies may charge more or less, right, based on how much you walk. So based on how much you have, the steps on your Fitbit, you could then get that. Sorry, I was probably my mic was messed up. So
No, that's all good. We talk about how data is making such a difference in the world, but in these different verticals. But data in healthcare, I think, is there's so much that is untapped information that's there. There's so much opportunity for innovation. And when the other thing that gets interesting is when there's a bad echo. Interesting. I wonder why that started. Oh, I think it's because I pushed a button. Let's see if that echo goes away. Hopefully the echo goes away. Of course, there's a 30-second delay, so I won't know for 30 seconds. So when we think about the value that data is providing in all sorts of industries, there's a wealth of information that's available. And as I go and create data with my primary health provider or with my health system, that's been challenging to be able to share over time. But FHIR is not a new standard, came back around in 2012. Maybe you can talk a little bit, Vinesh, about how that is helping.
Yeah. So what we are seeing, Jeff, I think there's the echo.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to power through while I work to fix it. I can't fix it if you're not talking.
Yeah, we are starting to see, for the first time, Jeff, what was previously in manila folders and now in digital form, electronic systems, be exposed as discrete piece of data that can fuel connected apps, right, that make better sense of the system. So now I want to know which patients have had a blood pressure that's been elevated in the time since we have last visited. Well, it used to be, I'd have to rummage through all the records, and if it was digital, to sift through many pages, documents. And today we are in a position where I can just literally ask for that blood pressure and figure out all the patients, blood pressure checks which are elevated, so I can do something about it. And now that's a big deal, right? So FHIR is the standard that's making all those things happen. Medicare has declared shift in payment, and now they're going to do. Private insurance will also follow. But what they're saying is, here are the data formats. Want this information. That if a patient is trying to understand the health records and is keen to understand their own blood pressure readings, that's what FHIR is going to allow patients to do.
Excellent. All right. So, still echo. Well, I made a few changes, but we are at the top of the hour, or the top of our segment here, Vinesh. So I do appreciate, being on. I'm not sure why the echo showed up, so everyone, super sorry about that. But Vinesh is going to become a bit of a regular around here, so we will continue this conversation in the not too distant future. So a huge opportunity for changes in and around the healthcare system, in and around how technology is going to impact it, and beyond just thinking about, hey, are you going to the cloud? I mean, again, think about that Internet of Medical Things, how far it goes out to the watch. This isn't a fancy one, but think about that. And all the sensors that exist there and where data plays in. So Vinesh, thank you so much for being a part of this. And we'll definitely have you back on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there were some challenges, but we'll be back.
We'll be back. All right. Thank you so much. All right, folks. Love getting new folks on here, and Vinesh is certainly one of those that you're going to want to get to know a little bit more, and he'll be around here. If you do not follow Vinesh Kolpe, I can bring his image back up. I'd love for you to go reach out to him on LinkedIn. A wealth of information. There he is. There's how you spell his name. Go find him on LinkedIn. You will be glad that you did. All right, folks, let's move on. So that takes us through our conversation here this morning. And if you want to learn more about what we're up to over here at the Solve program, which is, of course, our thought leadership program, as I mentioned earlier, well, just head over to rackspace.com/solve. Lots of free stuff there. Say this every single time. What you will not find there is a pop-up chat asking you to buy a thing. You will not have to enter in an email address for 99.9% of the content that's there. You can just go and consume it for free, whether it's the podcast, articles, infographics, research papers. It's all there. Go check it out over at rackspace.com/solve. And of course, subscribe to the podcast. Consider it a personal favor, as if I need a personal favor from any of you. I would love it, but I do not demand it. All right, so let's move on to This Week in Cloud. And in This Week in Cloud, of course, that is where I will share a couple of news articles and why it's important to you in this cloudy world. And it starts today with an interesting article that I found that was written in the context, because this is a global audience. So I'm bringing in some content for my friends who are over in the Middle East. And this is an article written by Div Shabat, and it was how cloud computing will serve as the foundation for business innovation. Now, what I find interesting about this article is it talks about a lot of the things that we know to be true. And so why this I'm bringing this up today is that cloud transformation and technology transformation is technology transformation. It's one of those things that spans the borders. It's one of those things that is ubiquitous across the world right now. And that is, how do we go about using the right technology at just the right time to make just the right impacts in our organizations? And it gets challenging because we get excited about the future of what we can actually do. And it's good to have a faraway vision. You got to know the mountain that you're heading for, but it's important also to know where those next steps are. So this article covers things like, are some companies reluctant to move to the cloud? Absolutely. We still have some areas. We just talked about how some traditional healthcare companies are very reluctant there. We talk about security challenges and then also what are the risks of not moving to the cloud, because there are very real risks if you don't continue your transformation as an organization. So it's a great article. I found it over on MSNBC, MSN, not MSNBC. Sorry, too many letters. But if you just go search for that, you will absolutely find it. Maybe I can post it in the chat at some point. Now, also, I love to have some cybersecurity in each of these updates, and here is one. Now, London police have arrested that pesky little hacker who went after Uber not too long ago, as well as Rockstar Games. Now, what is interesting about this is that this hacker, he both hacked sensitive data and got data that was stolen. The culprit, who identifies himself as, wait for the name, Teapot, took responsibility for the hacks, and the London police force's investigation found that it was an individual from Oxfordshire, England, who is 17 years old. That's right, a 17-year-old did those notable hacks of just a few weeks ago, and he was also part of the hacking group Lapsus. Now, Lapsus is a company that has had some very high-profile hacks of recent. Microsoft, they've gone after who else? NVIDIA, a bunch of other interesting folks. But I bring this article up just to reiterate the fact that security needs to be top of mind of everything. Now, in that last article, what are some of the challenges of moving to the cloud? Security. Now, is security a reason not to move to the cloud? Absolutely not. If you stay in your data center, do you still need new security? Absolutely. Security conversation is, in a sense, sidelined from, do I go to the cloud or not? You must do modern security regardless, because these folks are coming for you. I hate to say it, but they are coming for you. All right. So that's what's new in the news. Let's move on over to what's new from our cloud providers. And we'll start, as we oftentimes do, with AWS. Now, AWS, don't go too far. AWS MSK serverless is now HIPAA eligible. Yes, I did choose this because it's a healthcare thing, and we're talking about healthcare. Now, MSK is a service. Where did all my notes go? There they are. Over at AWS that enables managed Kafka. And Kafka is, of course, an amazing service, but oftentimes needs to scale beyond what your environment tends to need. But if you go over to AWS, their MSK service is a managed Kafka service, and now it is HIPAA eligible. Now, this also makes me want to call out, when we say things like HIPAA eligible, it means it doesn't magically make your application HIPAA compliant. It is a HIPAA eligible tool that can be put into a HIPAA engineered and architected solution that you can then have certified as HIPAA compliant, but it doesn't magically make it HIPAA compliant. All right, let's move on to our friends over at Azure. Now, the interesting thing about my Azure updates is to call out the fact that oftentimes, as I've mentioned, where these cloud providers are being additive to their services that they create. I oftentimes call that out. Isn't it great that Amazon, Azure, Google will take a service and make it more better in the future? Well, sometimes they have to remove things. So in this case, there are many services that they are removing. A lot of it has to do with some of the Postgres integration. It has to do with how you're handling pipeline creation. You can head over to just do a little search on Azure Updates, and you'll find the list of the 5 or 6 things that they listed that will that are going to go end of life. Now, this is out pretty far, a couple of years out, but it also calls out the fact that it's super important for you to not only pay attention to the new things in the cloud, but those things that your solutions may be riding on, and you need to re-architect them because they're going to go away. So the cloud is a different animal. It is a different ethos from how you manage things today. You have to get to a point where you or your team or your consultants or your Rackspace, whoever that might be, is paying attention to these updates, new and the ones that are retiring, to make sure that you're using the latest and greatest and still existent technology. All right, let's go over to GCP. GCP BigQuery Omni introduces support for on-demand pricing, which is super exciting, which means as they go out and use BigQuery to access connections in other clouds, because this will Omni is what allows you to pull data sets out of Azure or AWS. They have on-demand pricing, which is super cool. All right, well, I tell you I don't sell you things here, but I do sell you only one thing, and that is maybe you want to come and work with Daniel and I. Producer Daniel is looking for a new friend. Well, we're all looking for new friends, really, when you think about it. But the job of the day, if you want to come and work at Rackspace, we have got a job for you. And it starts today. Well, not starts. The only one we have is a lead architect for AWS Professional Services. Now, we had somebody here from Ontario, I believe, or Ottawa. Started with an O, in Canada. This job is located in Canada. So if you are a Canadian and you are an AWS smart person, well, maybe you too want to come work at Rackspace. You need to have the ability to connect technology with measurable business value. I'm just going to stop right there. You can read the rest. That's in the heart of what we try to do with our customers here, and that is to point our customers and help them be able to create value. It's what you should be doing with the cloud. As technologists, we love the shiny new things. We love to get our hands on the new tech. But at the end of the day, it has to create business value. And if you're good at doing that with AWS and you live in Canada, well, this is the job for you. Go over to Rackspace.jobs, and it's there above the fold somewhere. You'll find it. I did. That's all I did was head over to Rackspace.com or Rackspace.jobs. All right, folks, everything is available for you that we've talked about today, as well as a veritable plethora of other content is available over at Rackspace.com/solve. Head over to there, send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn. Tell me what your favorite article is. Tell me what your least favorite article is. Probably one I wrote, but go check that stuff out. I would love for you to do that. All right, my friends, I was last Monday at an event with some of our partners, and one of the companies that was there was one of my favorite companies. If you're in software development, I'd love for you to think about AppDynamics, because AppDynamics is the leader in full stack observability. So if you want to understand what's happening with your apps from the end user all the way to the back-end database and how that connects, where am I in the phrase, in the screen, into business value, true business KPIs, well, AppDynamics is the company for you. Just head over to appdynamics.com. Tell them Jeff sent you. I don't know who you're going to tell that to, and if they'll care, but tell them I sent you. Next week, folks, it's the beginning of October. I know the celestial bodies tell us we're already in fall, but for me, October is that landmark. And what I get excited about at the first of every month is it's Women in Tech Tuesday next week. And I have asked a very special lady to come be a part of the event. It's Shannon Enix. Shannon is a senior product manager in and around. She does a ton with our security stuff. I like to say she's the brains of the operation. But she's going to be here to help tell her story next Tuesday. So I do hope that you will be here to be a part of that conversation and support Shannon. She's a little nervous, but I think she's going to do amazing. Well, folks, that's the end of this episode of Cloud Talk Live. I'll see you next week.